All right, so we're going to get started. If anyone is having any audio difficulties, let me know in the chat box, and I should be able to respond to any questions. So we're going to go ahead and get started here, just to make sure that people can hear me. If someone could just give me a little thumbs up in the chat box, that would be great. So let's see, we're really excited that everyone could join us here today. I'm going to start sharing my screen so that we can talk about some of the slides that I whipped up here. So let me get that going. And let's see. Huh. Okay, well, we'll just have to do the way we're using it right now. All right, so we're really glad that everyone could join us here. This is a pretty exciting day. This is big news for us this morning. So I'll talk a little bit about who we are, and then we'll get a little bit into the weeds of the announcement here this morning. So my name is Kevin Lee. I am the program director with MCEA, and I direct the Climate and Energy program here. The Climate and Energy program at MCEA is a team of attorneys and policy analysts. We work basically on two goals. Our first highest priority goal is to move past coal generation in our state. We still have a number of coal plants providing electricity throughout the state. There's Boswell up in northern Minnesota. There's Allen King in Stillwater, and there's of course the Sherco plant in Becker. So that's one of our main priorities. And the second priority is to basically electrify the economy as quickly as possible so that we can benefit from that greener grid. And so let's talk a little bit about the announcement today. And I want to give a little bit of a caveat here first, which is that I haven't seen, this will be an actual bill, and I haven't seen the language of that bill quite yet. So what I'm going on is the details that we have from the announcement itself. And the centerpiece, I would say, of this announcement is a change to our renewable portfolio standard up to 100% clean energy by 2050. Currently, we have a requirement to generate 25% of our electricity with renewable sources. And so this would be a pretty substantial step up. So that is the first part of it. It also incorporates some aspects of a bill called Clean Energy First. And what this would do it would be directed at the Public Utilities Commission, and it says, whenever a utility is looking to add generation to their system or refurbish some old generation to their system, they have to consider renewable energy before they would entertain any possibility of using fossil fuel infrastructure. And then the third thing that this bill will do is increase the energy efficiency requirements that a utility has to use. And it's called the CIP program, CIP, it's Conservation Improvement Program. And what this says is that every utility has to implement programs that will allow customers to use less energy, and they have a specific number requirement for how many sort of kilowatt hours those programs have to represent. And so this bill would up those requirements rather substantially. And then one of the last things that it would do is, there we go, got the slide. So hopefully you should all see some slides now. Sorry for the technical difficulties. So what our understanding of this announcement would do is to increase some of the spending that would allow low-income households to pay for some of these energy efficiency programs. That's a priority for us because we think it's critical to ensure that everyone can enjoy the benefits of renewable energy and conservation, and then that doesn't just flow to those that are able to afford it. So let's talk for 1 second about what this plan doesn't do. This plan is directed at the electricity sector, so meaning the utilities generating electricity. It does not regulate anything in the transportation industry, heavy industry, carbon emissions from buildings, so residences, businesses. It also doesn't deal with carbon emissions from agriculture, which all of those things have been increasingly large sources in Minnesota. Transportation in particular has now eclipsed electricity as the largest emitter of carbon in the state. So let's talk a little bit about why we're excited for this announcement. One thing is that we think this is a pretty ambitious plan. So the centerpiece of it, increasing the renewable portfolio standard to 100%, would put us in the top tier of states in terms of our generation of electricity. That is a big step. We think that, you know, basically, if there's any consensus around addressing climate change, it's that we have to green the grid and electrify everything. And so this is the first part of that. And so we think that it enables a lot of reductions in those other sectors because, you know, if we have a whole fleet of electric vehicles, those emission reductions are much less beneficial if they're relying on coal power, of course. So that's a key part of it. One other key part of it is the fact that state actions are even more critical than they have been in the past due to a lot of the rollbacks that are happening at the federal level. That's another reason why we think this is pretty important. One is that renewable portfolio standards are very effective. And I'll go into a little bit of the details here about how this compares with other states so that you can see what I'm talking about. And then again, you know, this is the first step toward unlocking carbon reductions in the transportation sector and heavy industry. You know, the first thing that we got to do is green the grid, and that's what this proposal would do. So we can look at it in terms of a number of other states. So what we were looking at here is similar policies around the country, and the percentages that you're seeing are percentages of electricity that have to be generated by renewable energy. And so you see that our existing standard right now is 26.5%. The reason why that's such a specific number is that it's 25% renewable, and then there's a specific carve out of 1.5% purely for solar energy. And that's why that goes up to 26%. So if that went up to 100, that would put us pretty much just behind Hawaii in terms of, if this bill passed, in terms of having really bold, aggressive portfolio standards. So I'll take just a second to talk about what that means. I've used that phrase a number of times now, portfolio standard. This is kind of the workhorse of clean energy policies. And they're very straightforward policies that direct utilities to generate a certain percentage of their electricity from certain types of technologies. You know, most often it's renewable technologies, wind and solar most often. And so that's what it does. It's a very direct policy. It's historically been very successful in reducing carbon emissions because of its effect on the price of some of these technologies. So we'll talk about that a little bit right now. So here what you're looking at is the percentages of electricity in Minnesota that have been generated by renewable sources. And so what you're seeing here is a steep rise that starts in about 2007. So in 2007, that's when our state passed the Next Generation Energy Act. And that's when we put into place this renewable portfolio standard that we have right now of 25%. And so you see the generation start to really take off after that point. And so that's what I'm talking about when I talk about how these policies just work. They are the sort of understated workhorses of this field, because, you know, a lot of times you hear a lot of talk about carbon pricing, taxes, fee and dividend, and all through that discussion, renewable portfolio standards are just kind of quietly working in the background to make the rollout of these renewable energies much faster. And so you'll see a little bit of a tick up here in renewable energy in 2005 and 2006, and that's a little bit of a spillover effect from other states taking actions that basically reduce the cost of these technologies. So one of the main benefits of these policies is that it provides a very long-term signal to people in the industry that allow them to make the long-term investment decisions that they need for these types of technologies. You know, the electricity industry works in very large time frames, you know, anywhere from 20 to 40 years. And so providing that signal gives them the predictability and the certainty that they need to implement the investments that are needed. And then there you get this virtuous cycle where once those investments get started, competition kicks in and prices start to come down. And we've seen that happen in wind and solar. We're starting to see that happen with battery storage. And we would anticipate that that would happen with technologies that we may not have even heard of yet. You know, 2050 is a long way away, and technologies that right now are very expensive, you know, once they get started in pilot programs and then they get scaled up, and these types of policies, portfolio standards, can encourage that scale up, which then reduces the cost and increases the implementation of that technology basically across the country. And so here you see what effect that has had in our state on the generation of electricity. And it's pretty drastic. So 2007 was the year that we first enacted this renewable portfolio standard. And you see that we are at about almost 60% of our electricity was generated with coal. And so by implementing that law, we've reduced it pretty substantially. And you see that the generation from renewables has taken up a lot of that. And so what this announcement will do is accelerate that even further. And one of the reasons why we're really excited about it is because, you know, the reason why coal generation is our top priority is not just because of climate change, although that's certainly the most drastic reason. There are also some very local significant health benefits from getting coal off of the grid. You know, you see the cardiovascular and asthma impacts from burning coal are significant. You see mercury contributions to waterways. The mercury goes in the air, it settles down into rivers. So this policy, increasing this to 100%, would have some really substantial health benefits that we'd be really excited about. So that is basically the gist of it. We're really excited that everyone could join us for this. And I'm just taking a look here at see if there's any questions, and I don't see any, which is good. So yeah, we're really excited to see more details once this bill is released. I understand that it will be released this afternoon, and so we'll get a little bit more details on the specific language. And we'd be really excited to talk with you all about what that's going to look like when it finally gets introduced. And so I just want to encourage people to you know, reach out if they have any questions about any of this. This is exciting. It's not often in this industry that we have a day like this, but I got to tell you, it feels really good to just have an announcement like this that we can just really get behind and use to sort of foresee this future that we know that needs to happen. So we're really excited about it. We're really glad everyone could join us, and reach out over email if anyone has any specific questions. I'd be happy to answer them. And other than that, you'll probably hear from us over email. So thank you, everyone.